All right, so I'm ready now to get um, my shooter to start moving back and forth with the keys. Um, but before I do that, I've done a chunk of work so far that I'd rather not have to do over again. So I'm going to save my scenario as Space Invaders version 2. So, and what that means is that my old version, version 1, is still there in case I need to go back and um, in case I make a mess here in version 2, I can go back and check version 1. So let's see. What we want is to move the shooter when we move the keys. So um, we basically, the way this works is we have this act method, and we have an act method and this thing called run. Right? When you press the run button, basically what it does is it calls the act method over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so if we put something in the act method, and it could be in the act method of the shooter or it could be in the act method of space. If we write something in that act method that checks the keys and acts based on the keys, then um, that's what we can use. Um, Now, depending on the game you're running, I'm just trying to think right now if I want to have the the control keys business in my space um, class or in my shooter class. And I think I'm only going to have one shooter ever in the game. So if I was going to have lots of shooters, it might get confusing, or different things that were going to be controlled with the keys, then it might be confusing. But I'm only ever going to control the shooter with the keys. All I'm going to do is right now, I want to be able to move him back and forth, and then in the future, I just need to be able to shoot with him, and there will be a bullet object, but I can have the shooter tell the bullet to create the bullet and tell the bullet to shoot. So I think I'm just going to put the um, the keyboard controls in the act method for the shooter. Okay. So what I can do here is, let's look at the Greenfoot documentation for this. So if we go into the Greenfoot class documentation, there's a bunch of static methods in Greenfoot. And oh, look right up here, it has key names. So it says part of the functionality provided by this class is the ability to retrieve keyboard input. The methods getKey and isKeyDown are used for this, and they return or understand the following key names. So they, any of the alphabetical keys or the number keys, up, down, left, right, the cursor key. So that's what I'm interested in. So I'm going to want to use left and right at this point. And then space, I'll want to use the space bar for shooting later on. So that's good to know that I have those. So I can use getKey, or I can use isKeyDown, it says. So what does getKey do? GetKey, that will get the most recently pressed key since the last time the method was called, and then isKeyDown will check whether a given key is currently pressed down. So what I want, the kind of behavior that I want, is that as long as I have the left key pressed down, my shooter is going to move to the left, and as soon as I press down the right key, he changes and starts moving to the right. So isKeyDown seems like a good bet for that one. Now notice this one has a java.lang.string parameter, and we said before that if an object belongs to some special Java package, it'll the documentation for Greenfoot will show you that. But actually, as it happens, anything that's in the java.lang package, you don't need to do a special import for it. So we can just have a string object without having to import java.lang. That's not something we have to import. So we can do isKeyDown, and we're going to pass it a string. And a string is basically some characters with quotes around it, like this is a string here. Quote left quote or quote right quote. Okay. So let's take another look at our act method. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong stuff here. And so what we want to do is we want to check and see if the key down is a left key or if it's a right key. Oh yeah, this is really important, isn't it? Is key down, what does is key down return? So is key down requires a key name, right? A string that's the name of the key. So we could have a letter of the alphabet if you wanted to use ASDF, whatever, or W or whatever for directions, or we could use left and right. We're going to use left and right for the arrow keys. But we have to, since it's a string, you have to put it in quotes. What it returns is a Boolean, okay? And also we see here it's static, so we're going to have to say Greenfoot dot is key down. We're going to have to use the class name with a dot to call this method because it's static. Okay, there's only one. It goes with a class, not with an object. All right, and then it's going to return a Boolean, so it's going to return true or false. So it returns true if the key's down. Otherwise, it's going to return false. Okay, so now let's take another look here. All right, so we can use that, since it's a Boolean, we can use if, I said it and I forgot to do it, if Greenfoot dot is key down, let me make sure I'm spelling it right. In fact, I can just copy it, can't I? Copy, so I'm saying copy, and then here I'm going to say paste, is key down left. Okay, so now notice this is a nice feature of Greenfoot. You see the little I don't know what color that is, like maybe a pink kind of rectangle around this parentheses right here. What that's telling you is that this parentheses that you just typed matches this parentheses. But we still need one to match this parentheses over here. So I'm going to type one more. And now you see the pink rectangle has popped over to here. So this is telling you, oh, okay. Now you've matched this parentheses. So whenever you make an if statement, all your parentheses have to match up, right? This parentheses matches this one. This parentheses matches that one. If I have two parentheses, two opening parentheses, I have to have two closing parentheses. Okay. So this is the beginning part of our if statement. And to write the body of our if statement, we need to use brackets, right? So I'm going to make my opening bracket and my closing brackets, and then everything that I want to happen when this is true, I'm going to put that in between. So what do I want to happen when this is true? Well, I want the shooter to move to the left. So what does that mean exactly? And how do we make that happen? So let's look at let's look at actor for a second here. So what are our choices as far as moving somebody around? We have this this move method, which moves the actor the specified distance in the direction it's facing. But remember, we set our guy to face north, right? We set his rotation to 270, so he would be facing north. So we don't want him to move north when we hit the left arrow key, right? We want him to move left. So let's see what. So we would have to actually. Oh wait, where am I? We would have to actually change his direction to left. We would have to change his direction to 180 and then move him left. But we don't want to do that because then his body will turn around. And we don't want to, that's not what we want, right? So there's this other method called set location, and that will assign a new location for this actor. Let's see, let's take another closer look at that one. So we can assign a location, we can put him anywhere on the screen that we want, at any X and any Y, okay? So the way that, how does the XY stuff work? Well, here's the coordinate system. Generally, what you see in Java is this upper corner here is 0, 0, and then as you move this way along the x-axis, the x gets bigger, and as you move this way along the y-axis, the y gets bigger. So that's not the way you usually see it in math class if you've done anything with Cartesian coordinates. But this is basically, I think because they used to use these coordinates on TV screens, looking at, so it's more thinking about rows and columns of little tiny dots, okay? So for example, this wombat right here is at, if we do a get x, his x is 0, and if we do a get y, his y coordinate is 0, okay? The cells, all these little squares on this leaves and wombat scenario are pretty big, and that's because in wombat world what we did was we set the cell size to 60 pixels, okay? If you look at our space world, the pixels are just, we just have just 1 pixel, okay? This gives you more control over motion and stuff. We'll see that later, but as far as, you know, understanding, I think this is it's easier to see the x and y coordinates looking at this guy. So if we move, so this is 0, 0, right, where we are now, right? And then if we move here, now we're at location 1, 0. X is 1 and y is 0. Let's see, if we pull up inspect, let's see. Oh yeah, so they show you the x and y right here. Now x is 1 and y is 0. Does this guy, let me see if I press the act button, if that, okay, yeah, so that moves him, and we see that his, we see his x change to 2, right? His y is still 0 because he hasn't moved it all this way. If we move him, now his x is 2 and his y is 2. Now his y is 3. So if as we move down this way, the y gets bigger, and as we move across, the x, you see now the x is 4. If I click it again, the x is 5. So the x gets bigger as we go this way, y gets bigger as we go that way. All right. So let's get back to our guy here. Okay. So so if the key is down left, we want to set the location left of whatever the location is right now. To the left of whatever it is right now. So so what does that mean? Well, when you're using, so remember when we talked about turn and set rotation? So if you say turn will just, if I say turn 90 degrees, he'll turn and face this way. If I say turn 90 again, he'll turn and face this way. So turn is relative to whichever way you happen to be pointing. And set rotation sets you to a specific direction. It'll make you go face north, south, east, or west. Okay? So there's a similar idea when we're talking about set location and move. What set location does is set location puts you in a particular spot. So if let me go back to this guy. If I say set location, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1. So if I say set location 2, 1, it's going to stick me right here. So let's try that. If I say set location 2, 1, it puts me right there. And if I say set me to 2, 1 again, oops. It looks like nothing happened because it's keeping me there. Because it sets me at 2, 1. So just like with set rotation, if you say set rotation 90 50 times, you're still going to be facing the same direction. If you say set location 2, 1 50 times, you're still going to be in the same square. When you say move, and you say move some number of cells, then if I say move 1, it moves me 1 in the direction that I'm facing. If I say move 1 again, it moves me 1 again. So it moves you 1 from the place you're at, okay, based on your rotation. If I change my direction here, if I set my rotation to 90, so I'm facing south here, and now I say move 1, it's gonna, or I'll say move 2. Move 2. It moves 2 in the direction that I'm facing. Okay? So that's the difference between set location and move. But remember, we decided we want to use set location, right? So how do we set location relative to the position where we're at now? We need to know, so because if we just say, you know, set location to 1, 2, it's just going to, no matter how many times we press left, we're not going to move. We're just going to still be in that same location. So basically, so what we have to do is we have to get the location that we're in, and then figure out how we change that that value to the new location. So what we can do is we have these methods get x and get y. So get x, no parameters, and it returns an integer that's the x coordinate of the actor's current location. And y, no parameters, and it returns the y coordinate of the object's current location. All right, so we can say int x equals get x, get my x, and int y equals get my y. Okay, so now I know what my x and y locations are. So how do I want to change my x location? Well, I want my x location to go in this direction, right, to the left, right? So as I go to the left, the x values get smaller, right? If I start out here, if this is 100, I'm going to go to 99, 98, all the way down to 0, right? So to get the x value to get smaller, I need to subtract something from it. So let's do that. Oops. Okay. So let's subtract something from x. Let's say x equals x minus 5, let's say. So now x is going to have a smaller value. If x was 100, x minus 5 is 95. So I'll set the location to 95, right? So if I say x, and we'll leave y the same because we don't want to go up or down. We just want to go back and forth. So now I'm going to set the location to this new location that's based on the x and the y that I had from before. Okay, so let's compile that. Oops, I forgot my semicolon. Okay, let's compile the whole thing. And now if I say run and press the left arrow key, whoa, he goes to the left until he hits the edge of the world. Okay, so that's a start, and then we'll pick up with moving in the other direction the next time.